This is the Emotional Horsemanship podcast. I am Lockie Phillips, your host. Emotional Horsemanship coaches deeply caring horse people to train emotionally balanced horses with science, empathy, and feel. And this is the podcast dedicated to exploring all of that within. We try to innovate horse training that puts the horse first. Season 2 of this podcast brings us solo episodes, special guests, and small groups of guests as we discuss horses, horse training, the equestrian industry, and the big, beautiful ideas that horses inspire in us always. Your guest on the podcast today is Hoofcare legend Ida Hammer. Ida Hammer is the founder of the Mackinac Dells 2 Whole Horse Hoofcare Certification Program based in Illinois, with training programs and opportunities throughout the US. Ida Hammer has been a pioneer in the holistic hoofcare movement, primarily the barefoot hoofcare movement, and really is an authority on healthy hooves and the holistic elements that have to go into building up healthy hooves. I feel very, very fortunate that Ida agreed to join me on the podcast and was so generous to share her time and her expertise and her generosity with us. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm so happy to present her here to you. I hope you enjoy. Ida Hammer, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
Good.
Thank you for being here and making this time to speak with me today and to have us all hear you today. I'm very grateful to have you.
Grateful to be here. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
Oh, great. Well, listen, I've heard a rumor that maybe sometimes you do something with hooves.
I live, breathe, and drink them.
So, Ida Hammer, who are you? What do you do? And how do you do it?
First, do you want me to go from the long beginning, or do you want to just...
You can do, and in the beginning there was light. You can start there if necessary.
Well, I've had horses since I was a little kid. Yeah. So, I tell people at the class, you can tell that it's been a long time just by the color of my hair. So,
no.
Yes.
No.
So, I've had horses since I was 5, and we've done every kind of thing with horses, and we've been, that's the whole traditional thing. It's like, so there's all these learning curves for everything. And so we did a lot of stuff that we never went to the crazy side of doing crazy things, but stuff that I would still not ever do now. But we did the traditional things with the metal shoes on the horses and we didn't really have a reason why. It's just what people did. So that's what we did. And so, we had racing quarter horses. I jockeyed for a while. We did all kinds of sports. Just competitive trail riding was my favorite, actually, because it was the one sport that really you can't cheat. And everybody else, and my people in my classes know I pick on every modality of showing. It's like discipline, every discipline. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, because it's they all want to win at the expense of the horse, and so there's all that. And so I'll fast forward all my I won't go from birth to when I was a teenager, but we've had all this stuff that we did with horses for my whole life. But then when you fast forward to the 80s, my spouse and I bought our first cutting bred horse, and we were pretty excited. And at the time, we asked, who was the best cutting trainer that we could send her to. And so when you ask for best, this life is a learning curve. It's all of life is a learning curve. So it's when you ask for best, what are they the best at? Are they the best at winning? Are they the best at caring about your horse? Are they best about doing the right things? What are they best at? And so he came highly recommended as the best, but he was the best at winning, which is automatically a problem. So I'll preface that with saying, though, when we bought her, our little cutting horse, she was raised on pasture and whole corn. And so then we took her straight to the trainer, who is 6'3" and she's 14'1", as a 4-year-old, I'm like, so many bad things. So I'm like, so I tell my students like from the get-go, like when we're talking about stuff not to do, or like this is why you shouldn't do something. I'm not judging anyone because I've already done it. And so it's like I'm just trying to save them the heartache of doing it. So we got her and sent her to the best trainer, and she was very talented, and so he rode her a lot. Well, when she came back, she was intermittently lame. And so and Ada worked for the vet at the time, and he said, well, this is your $1 million horse because she has navicular disease. And like she's between 4 and 5 then. And we're like, okay. And so we did every single thing that we were told to do with her: hard bar shoes and isoxaprine and, like wedge pads. And like the wedge pads got to be ridiculous because it's like you use one wedge pad for a while and then it's another wedge pad, and then it's just ridiculous. And she never really got any better. She just like we had a buter to shoe her, a buter to do anything. So it just she was not miserable, like we had to put her down miserable, but she was not a sound horse. So um, everybody also knows that Ada always buys pretty, so she wanted to get another horse, and she had to be a blue roan. Didn't matter if it's sound or sane; it just had to be pretty. So, so we went and we found a like. And this is fast forward like several years after Seeker was diagnosed with her navicular disease. So fast forward to that, and so we took her a little spin in the arena. Like I took her for a little spin in the arena, and she was fine, like just for a little arena ride. And then we went out to go on a trail ride, and we didn't do a vet check because see, she was pretty, and all the wrong things. So we went to go on our first trail ride. We had him tied up, and well, she pulls back like a wild horse. Like she pulled back and was throwing herself on the ground and making bucking noises and groaning noises. And so Ada said, well, she's like, I think you can have her and I'll take your horse. And I said, okay. So we did that, and we switched, and she's a really rangy mare. I'm like, we still have her. She's amazing. But so like through my whole life of transitioning with horses, we went with like traditional stuff, traditional training, all that stuff. So then we moved up to where like, okay, we're going to take her to the Prairie Center for a week in Florida. So we went to do some natural horsemanship. We went down there, and more than two things. I will preface it with saying first, I'm like, it was 2 12-hour trips, 2 12-hour days to drive down there. And of course, she had metal shoes on because we're going to ride on sand. So, like, that's a necessity, not. So we did that. And then I also will preface it with saying that she was on the worst diet you could possibly give a horse because, again, it's like traditionally, like from where I came up from, it's like we do lots of molasses, lots of corn, lots of oats. And I will say just one tiny bit in my defense. In the 70s, I took horse nutrition classes, and the three main staples were oats, corn, and barley.
You're kidding.
No, it's like it was like I'm like I was all cocky proud, It's like I've got this diet, like, and I made them the best diet they loved, It's like they got molasses,
Sugar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of, and pure alfalfa hay. So it's like
Damn.
that's what they got. So when we went to Florida, and we spent a lot of intense days working. And we came back, and she was lame. So it's like, okay, I'm going to give her just a little bit. Maybe it's a trip or something like that. So we went to, like about a week later, like she was still pretty lame. So we went to the University of Illinois to have her checked to see what's wrong. And she has a scar on her left hip. It's a pretty significant scar. She's had that since we've had her. And she was palpating all kinds of sore on that scar, but they really zeroed in on her right front foot and wanted to x-ray it. So when they x-rayed it, she does have a huge navicular bone spur on her navicular bone. And so they started right in with their speech right away. I'm like, because she was only like 6 going on 7. So they started in their speech right away. This horse, you're going to need to put her in wedge pads and heart bar shoes and isoxaprine. And really, we suggest doing a neurectomy because like, she's really not going to, like, she's going to not make it for very long. I'm like, she'll never make it to be a teenager. And so Ada's like, we spent our first $1 million on the first horse. So like either like find a better way, put her to sleep now or get rid of her. Well, I joke with everybody here. It's like our place is like Hotel California. Horses come, but they never leave, so they're just, she's not going anywhere. So I had talked to my instructor that was down there, and she kind of got me connected with Pete Ramey. And then I actually went through the AA and HCP first.
And which year did you get connected with Pete Ramey?
That was in 2004.
Okay.
So I started with that group because Pete was in Jamie's group at the same time, the AA and HCP. And so I started learning like from them and the Mustang trim and stuff. And it was
From
good.
Pete and Jamie at the same time.
Yes, because
Wow.
Pete was still there. Pete and I are still friends, but he doesn't travel much. He doesn't travel at all, as far as I know now. Because I just talked to him last summer, and he said he's just enjoying living life and playing with his kids. So, and his grandkids now. But we were in that together, and then some stuff happened within the group that there was Jamie wanted us to sign a contract and stuff that would trim the horses the same. Like we had specifics that we'd trim to. And so fact of the matter is like anybody that knows me is I really don't like rules. Like they're, I really don't like rules. But that's pretty much it. It's like, unless there's a safety rule or something, but so I'm like, there's no way I'm ever signing a paper that I would do the same thing to every horse ever. So there's a lot of people that left, and Pete started the American Hoof Association then, and so I went with him. A lot of people left. Some stayed and did what they were told, and there was a lot of lame horses going on. And some stayed and didn't do what they were told. It just said they just signed the contract, and I'm like, I'm not going to do that either, because I'm not going to be dishonest about what I'm doing, and I'm not going to. There is no like I go off on this on a regular basis in my classes and stuff. There's no such thing as a one trim fits all, or there's no such thing as everything is the same on any living creature. Like there isn't. So went off with the American Hoof Association with them. And I taught for the AA. I taught trimming for the AA and HCP and anatomy classes for them while I was there also. And then just kind of like you about your horse owner classes, when I started doing that, I was teaching the professionals at the I'm not getting my talking too fast and getting my letters all blobbed up, but NHCP.
NHCP.
Yep. So I thought, well, when I quit training people to trim, like there's a huge gap, because a lot of the people that came to learn how to trim they started off as horse owners that wanted to trim their own horses, but they fell in love with it. So there's a huge gap. So I just started teaching horse owners. I was just doing horse owner classes. And then what would happen is that when I was doing that, a lot of the horse owners, like they fell in love with it, and then they helped their friends' horses, and then they helped their friends' horses, and so then they're like, well, can we start learning more stuff? So then I started turning it into a certification program, and the certification program that I have is a certification of completion, because I don't really like the certification of like, I don't like the idea of giving a certification for somebody to have like for like a blanket cover
to be a professional.
Yeah, because I mean, I have a lot of professionals, but the certificate for me means it's a certificate of completion. Like, and we have all kinds of continuing ed, and what they do with it, then they're still certified. I have certified trimmers, and then I have certified non-trimming fellows, which like body workers, they want to understand the feet, but they don't really want to trim the feet. But I have over 215, I probably have 275 graduates throughout the US. I have one in the UK, and we're hoping to get, we're in the middle of getting started in South Africa. I was getting a group over there. So I have lots of professional trimmers, but the continuing education part is up to them. And we have a private group of 215 of the graduates, and that we confer all the time on. It's a safe place for us to ask questions, like that we have the newest of graduates and the seniorest of graduates, and we're all on there to be able to ask questions and get advice and anything like that. So, because on that group, I don't allow any arguing, negativity, backbiting, or sharing any information outside of that group, because it needs to be a safe place for them to be able to ask questions and not feel silly.
Nice.
So, that's like, so it started off just being, for the horse owners when I left the AA and HCP, but it quickly got to be a certification program, and then I just keep adding classes, and then I have elective classes also so that they can keep growing. And one of the things, so many of the trimming schools or teachers or however you want to put it, like so many of them, and even the first group, because Jamie, that's the whole thing with the contract, he wanted all the horses trimmed the same, and so many of the instructors want clones of themselves, and I'm like, and I do not want clones of me. I want my people to be better than me. So that's a lot of gibberish for, like, maybe I answered way too much more than I needed to. I don't know, but so right now, currently, I have a certification program. I have, like I said, about 250 graduates. I have in close connection with 215 of them. I'm like, we talk regularly. I know their work. I'm like, I can see a foot trimmed and know who trimmed it. That we do usually we have 2 advanced professional classes a year. That's what I was hoping to get you to. Maybe next, like, I know this year is full, but maybe next year, like, as a guest. But we just, on those classes, it's for graduates only, and we just kind of nerd out the whole time. I'm like, well, whatever they want to do, we do. So we'll do experiments with hooves. I'm like, we'll have guest speakers. Like one year we did bread slices of the foot so we could actually see the digital cushion. There's actually micro ligaments inside the digital cushion, so we bread sliced those and put them under lights. We put computer chips on horses' feet to see how many milliseconds we could get their cadence. Like one of them had a torn patellar ligament, and so we just did some creative things to see what we could do to make that horse his most comfortable self and still keep healing even better. Just stuff like that. Like, and I'm biased, but I think I'm biased for a reason. But I'm like, the people that are in our group are the most progressive. They're just the most progressive, awesome horse people. I'm like, almost all of them follow this kind of stuff. They're like, I've encouraged them. Like, I went to Sharon May Davis whole horse dissection in 2023. I've encouraged my students to do that too, and so, like, many of them have done that. Like, they never stop learning, and so there's I just have the best job in the world.
Well, if you want to bring me over, count me in, because that sounds like a party that I wanna join. That sounds like fun.
Oh, it's so much fun. I'm like, we just do experiments. It's like, because there's really, like, the only rules, these are the only rules I have. It's like, for rules, it's like, you have to be safe. You and the horse have to be safe. You have to have fun and no negativity. I'm like, if we can get along with all that, then that's the only rules we have, because we just, like, whatever, like, and we start making plans now as far as, like, what do you want to do? What kind of experiments you want to do? So, like, we'll just do, like, we did experiments on, we took some cadaver legs and soaked them overnight in water, and a thin soled, average sole, a thick sole, and we could tell, just like by overnight soaking their feet, how much it softened the sole to where you could actually almost penetrate the coffin bone. So just different, like, whatever that you want to experiment. One time we had Wendy Murdoch was our guest, and we learned how to do Feldenkrais on each other first, so that we can feel what that felt like for the horses. So yeah, you definitely, like we need a 2026 have you.
I'd love to. Well, you're a legend.
That's funny.
But also self-deprecating, which most legends are.
Well, I don't know what to say about
I know
that.
I have a complicated relationship to compliments also. That's usually my party line. I say I have a complicated relationship to compliments. Thank you so much. And then we keep talking about something else. Let's dive into something nitty-gritty, hoof related or hoof care work related. Which one do you want to talk about first, Ida? Do you want to talk about hooves, or do you want to talk about the work of working on hooves first?
Whichever you want to do. Usually my motto is "Help, I'm talking and I can't shut up." So, like,
well, that's the point of a podcast. That's the point of a podcast.
You just direct me what to say, or
okay.
What do you want to talk about?
Let me start with this before we get to hooves, because I spent a short but meaningful period of my professional life trimming for the public locally in the south of Spain. So desert environment, rock hard hooves, and all of that goes with it. And usually atrocious horsekeeping. I say atrocious because I just interviewed a Spanish vet, and that was what she said. She said atrocious horsekeeping. And I went, your words, thank you. I'll borrow them. So a lot of problematic hooves, often unhandled horses, or horses in remote locations with long trim cycles, very robust conditions. It was a short and meaningful period, and I basically dipped my toe in to that field and went, oh, can't handle that heat. I'm getting out of that kitchen. So I got out of that kitchen, and then I focused on teaching owners to trim. My way of saying, well, how do you like it? Well, how do you like it? Criticize your farrier again. Come here, spend 3 months learning to trim, and then tell me if you'll ever criticize your trimmer or your farrier ever again. It's extremely difficult, extremely difficult. But also, I'm being facetious, of course, but more importantly, to really equip owners with what is kind of the last frontier in horse ownership and stewardship of horses. Even people who know something about saddle fit or something about bridle fit or something about training often don't know nothing about what happens below the pasterns.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't trim their own horses, it behooves them, pun intended. It's my favorite pun. I use it at least 3 times a day. It behooves them to know what's going on, at least for no other reason than if you're riding around and your horse feels off on the left hind and you pick up the foot and you're like, oh, there's some overlaid bar. I can fix that. You fix it, get back on, the horse goes well again. You can fix it on the spot, tinker with these things. But I got into it, and the thing that confused me the most, Ida, and I wonder if you want to speak to it in a positive manner, is the infighting inside the hoofcare community. Farriers against trimmers, one school of trimming against another school of trimming, this professional against that professional, this concept against that concept. I found it really exhausting. I found it a waste of time. I found it really dangerous and uncomfortable. And you're a positive person, so let's keep it light. But I wonder if you might just comment or speak to that for a moment as a legend in hoofcare yourself.
That still makes me laugh every time you say that.
You can laugh. I'll keep using it to keep making you laugh.
First off, it's like, I'm going to back up just a couple seconds here.
Yeah.
When I first started trimming, it was really, really a male dominated, like I got all this kind of stuff is like, oh yeah, it's a fad, it's going to pass. And it's like, and I'm like, and for the most part, I didn't have any problems, but I've had, in the very beginning, I had some like exhibits at horse fairs and stuff, and I'd have farriers come up, that they've been trimming for a long time, and they would try to intimidate me and stuff. And the one we end up becoming friends because he came up the very first year. I had Pete's book up on the table, and he came by, and Ada was manning the table at the time, and I just was going to get something to eat. And he came up and he grabbed that book, and he's like a big guy, and he's real boisterous, and he tossed the book down and he said, see this book? I don't believe anything in it. And Ada goes, Ida. And so I just came back, and
no,
he's like,
sorry, your spouse's name is Ada and you're Ida.
Yes.
That is the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
It is. It's the best thing all the way around.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Bless you both.
Well,
that's the best thing ever.
It is. When we got married, they called us, like, we now pronounce you the does.
Love it. Love it. That is so fantastic. Yes.
So he's trying to be, he's trying to be intimidating. He was like, it was a real new thing for, first of all, natural hoof care. And second of all, to be a woman in it, it's like when it's male dominated, at that point, male dominated. And so I come around the corner, and he did the same thing with me. He has his hands on his hips, and he's got his boisterous voice, and he's like, this book, and he tossed it on the table again for drama, I guess, effect.
Emphatic emphasis.
Yes. And he said, I don't believe a thing in it. And I said, I picked up the book, and I said, well, you pick anything out of this book and tell me what you don't believe, and I'll tell you why it's so. And he slapped his leg on his hand. He goes, we're going to be friends.
Yeah.
I wouldn't back down from him, because it's like, I'm like, you can intimidate all the people you want to, but like, I'm sorry, buddy, I'm a lot shorter than you, and I'm like, I can reach places you're going to be sorry if I ever swing at you. So, so and he did. He ended up. He goes. Actually, what I want to do is see if I could come ride along with you for a little bit because I have a client that wants me to learn how to trim like this. I said I'd
Mm.
be happy to. So I'm like, he came because I'm happy with that stuff. It's like, so I don't like all the backbiting. That's like with even in our group. I'm like, there is no backbiting or anything like that. So, um, and it could have went two ways. I'm like, he could have been there trying to intimidate me, and I could have like got defensive and just dismissed him and stuff. But then he wouldn't have learned how to like. And he's still like he's a 35-year-old veteran like horseshoer, so he still did what he did. But what he said was that he wanted to be able to do that for his client because she had asked him to learn how to do that kind of trim for her horses, and for him to be that seasoned and to be open enough to do that, old school guy. I'm like, I thought that was pretty impressive. So
Mm.
um so I don't really like the us versus them in any way, shape, or form. Like I've had horseshoers that I've many horseshoers like nail on horseshoe people come through my classes, no problems. It's like, and I different trimming schools. The I find that the trimming schools that have the biggest problem with all this rhetoric or whatever you want to call it is that they want everything to be just like theirs. Like, and there is in hoof care or horses, period, there is no just like anything. It's like it all is an individual thing. So you have to be and you have to be okay with being wrong. It's like that's one of the first things I will tell my students. It's like, I'm like, it's an uncomfortable feeling and I hate it, but you have to get used to being wrong, because if you're not okay with being wrong, you're never going to learn anything. You're going to be stuck in your ways. And so that happens with a lot of um, training schools or training, like who's ever doing the teaching. They don't want to ever be wrong. And if my student finds something that they're doing better than I am and they show me, I'm happy to be like, whether it be wrong or improved, however you want to look at it. If I'm just doing it wrong, I'd want to know it. And if it's improved, I'm like, my students teach me things all the time, and I'm happy with that. So I think that's the biggest problem, really, is that people don't want to be wrong, and they don't want to be um, they want people to do things just like them. And I really don't want people to do things just like me. I
Mm.
want I want people to do things. I want them to have a basic, they need to have a basic knowledge, and then the horse dictates the rest of it.
Mm.
And and black and white people want a paint by number.
Mm-hmm.
So did that answer your
Mm-hmm.
question?
It
Sort of.
did answer the question. This is the way I feel about it and the way I see it today at this time of day, but ask me in 10 minutes and I might change my mind.
Same.
Right now, in this moment, I think an us versus them mentality is helpful only when what you're discussing is fresh off the press, only when what you're discussing has never been discussed before, only when what you're discussing is cutting edge, innovative, and rocking the boat by the nature of its information, not the behavior of the information or the style of delivery, but by the nature of the information, it rocks the boat, such as iron peripheral loading devices will incur down the line potentially egregious health ramifications for the distal limb of the equine. When that first birthed into the industry as an awareness, by the nature of that information, it rocks the boat. And in that instance, the community at large, in my view, is not yet ready for emotional balance. We're not yet ready for reason. We're not yet ready for nuance, because what we're trying to do is lay some ground rules first. We're trying to understand yes and no before we look at maybes. We're trying to understand black and white before we look at the maybes. And you have to lay that first before you go to the nuance, because if you're going straight to nuance without foundations, you build a house of cards that comes crumbling down on you. And so any credible information, when it first tiptoes into the industry, will rock the boat and will cause division. Try and show me anything in human history where traditional practices were changed and nobody's feelings were hurt. It never happened. It never happened. And so we shouldn't expect that from ourselves. And as kind, gentle folk, we can't put pressure on ourselves to be perfect around new information. But the minute the information isn't new anymore, what we're supposed to do is pump our brakes, put our feelings on the shelf, be aware of how we feel about this, but then look at the information and understand the nuance of the ramifications of this information and then integrate it straight away. That's the way I see it right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. It's like because in two sorts of ways. It's like first, because again, it has to be, you have to accept something different than what you're used to. And so and I'm a pretty big bullhead. So like I don't trust anything until I research it to death. Whether and I will research, it doesn't make any difference what it is. It's like I will research whatever I need to research till I am convinced, at least convinced one way or the other, until I have better or different information.
Mm-hmm.
So I am like that too. But I guess my us versus them part that about that is there's always going to be an us versus them, but there can be an us versus them in a good way and an us versus them in a bad way. And the
Mm-hmm.
us versus them in the good way is that, like, okay, so just the whole scenario that you just spoke of. So you know, like we used to, like I said before, Michael, we did all the wrong things. So we used to use metal horseshoes, peripheral loading devices, and open heeled and all that stuff. And so now, uh, now we know that's not a good thing to do. And it makes sense. And that was one of the first things I learned early on in the training that I had. But I never, at that point, I never badgered anyone into making a change. I would give them pieces of information about what could be better. So it doesn't have to be an us versus them like that. Like there's always going to be that division of new knowledge versus old knowledge. And is the new knowledge any good, or is it just, a fleeting passing thing?
Right.
So I think I agree with you with the there's always going to be that anytime we have new information, there's going to be a division of what we knew and what we don't know. But what people do with it is what I just don't think. I think unless it's causing like a disaster, so unless it's something that's causing a disastrous harm, I think that there are better ways than us versus them. It could be like differences of opinion. Let's discuss. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And again, I don't disagree with you. I also think there's space for all kinds of voices. Human society is a village for a reason. And some of the most advanced sociologists have argued that even sociopaths have a function in society, which is a hard thing to understand. But everyone from scientists to artists have understood that all viewpoints and all voices are needed in times of change, even the voices that perhaps have room for improvement in regards to respect for others and kindness for others. We still need those voices. And I get them. They show up on my social media and they say this and they say that against my information. And often it's ad hominem attack, and often they've just gone outside of themselves, haven't made their position clear, and they'll come to me just to bring me down. And I don't do that to other people. I talk plenty of smack on my own channel, but I don't go outside of my own platform to do it. I do it from my environment. If people want to come to me to talk to me, it's different, or I invite people. But I understand that crappy commenter is still a human being. And as much as I grit my teeth and hate to say it, their voice is needed too. Because there are some people who won't listen to anything else except the harshest of voices. Some people just won't listen to anything else except the most strident and aggressive voice.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Because and sometimes those type of personalities will get the ball rolling for
Right.
um, a better a
That's right.
better way to put it.
That's
So
right.
like, but I feel the same way. It's like, first of all, it's like, I've had people, like, especially in the beginning, they would get to, I'd post maybe an advertisement for class or something, and they would, and that back then, it was usually like a lot of the guy farriers yet still, and they'd be like, oh my good, like they know nothing about me, but they're like saying that good, they can mess up all the horses, so we'll have more business and stuff. And so, but I just responded to him. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I don't know you. So if you do really that good of a job, I'm like really excited for the horses in your care. I said, but I'm like, if you don't do that good of a job, then I'm really sorry for the horses in your care. So it's like, but since I don't know you, nor do you know me, maybe we could just agree to disagree.
Classy.
But
I'll call that class. You're a class act, Ida Hammer.
I'm a smart ass, but
Well, smartass, he's smartass. It takes one to know another. So yeah, let's put that on the shelf. Enough of talking about that. Let's talk about hooves. You spoke a little earlier about people needing to know the basics, and then from there we can explore. If you had to explain day 1.1 in a few dot points or less, that's the hardest thing ever to synthesize. The basics of the healthy foot.
so the basics of the healthy foot. I would say in a nutshell, to have, well, let me put it this way, to have a healthy foot in a perfect world, because I'm like, there are some imperfections in our world, but to have a healthy foot, first, like, you have to treat diet. You
Mm.
have to, so I'm going to say diet, trim, environment, spirit, and teeth. It has to be whole horse. So like, so for my trimming classes, it's like, it's always whole horse. So whole horse means whole horse. You have to treat the diet is always the first thing. And so talk about, I'm going to digress for just a second, because I think this is funny because I lived through it. But I told you about how terrible our diet was with our horses. And the first
Mm-hmm.
class I went to, it was in New York. I went to class with Pete, and it was the whole beginning thing. And one of the first things he said was, like, all sweet feed needs to have a warning label on it, like they do for cigarettes. And I truly was not being a smart aleck then. I was just like, is that bad? Is that a bad thing? Because it's like, I
Didn't know.
didn't. So then they explained it. And so I'm like, and it was a long day and it was a lot of information. So I went back to the hotel, and Ada goes, how was class? And I said, it was great, but horrible. And she goes, what does that mean? I said, well, I learned a lot, but mostly what I learned is we're doing everything wrong.
Damn.
It's like, we're feeding wrong, like we're feeding the horses wrong. I'm like, we're keeping them wrong. We're doing everything wrong. And so uh so diet sticks out in my mind the most, because that is like because out of all the things that we were doing wrong, and we were doing several things wrong, but when I after I went through my first round of mentorships, um in the group that I started with, both of our navicular horses were sound within 2 trims. But when I say that, they were sound within 2 trims, but it wasn't the magical trim that made them sound. I'm like, the trim was definitely better. I'm like, the long toes were gone, all the leverage is off, but it was the diet. The inflammation was gone because they were not getting an inflammatory diet anymore. So I was like, diet has to be first, because you can't trim a good foot onto a horse that has a really crappy diet. You
Mm-hmm.
can't trim a good foot onto a horse that's stuck in a stall 24/7 because they don't ever get any movement or circulation or anything. You can't get a good foot on a horse that's sad. You can't get a good foot on a horse that's body's all screwed up. You can't get a good foot on a horse that's teeth are screwed up. And there's just all of it. It's like every single thing, to the point that, sidetracking a little bit, but still the same. But I had one of my graduates, she had one of her metabolic horses foundered on her, and she was treating it, and she'd get him almost where he was 100% rehabbed, but he would just digress just a tiny bit, and then just kept happening like that. So she went and she thought outside of the box, and so she decided that she was going to move him, because where he was at, he was with other horses, but he didn't have friends. They weren't friendly. And so she moved him into a herd that he had friends, and that was the last piece. Like his feet finished healing completely. Like they're like normal feet. So that's a hard thing for old timers to put that piece into it. But it's like if you're depressed, I'm like, you're not at your best health either. So horses get depressed and all the same things. So it's the whole thing. It's the diet, it's the movement, it's the exercise, it's the environment, it's their friends, it's their psyche, it's their spirits, like it's everything. So that puts it in the trim. So and oddly enough, I'm a trimmer, but the trim is important for sure, but it's the least important out of all of it.
Oh, 100%. I mean, in my course for owner trimmers, I generously say, trim is only 20% of the picture. And that's generously said. And before I teach that trim, or the two different trims I teach in that course, such as it is lifestyle, pathology, anatomy, alternative protection devices and strategies that aren't a peripheral iron loading device. And I couldn't help but sneak into there some of the ethics around training as well and how important that is. Because, for example, I remember when I learned how to ride a barefoot horse, especially on a trail, especially on a challenging trail, that you can't tell them where to go, how to go there so precisely that they can't insert their own direction. They can't insert their own adjustments. A barefoot horse has to be given at least a modicum percentage, if not the vast majority percentage, if not all of the percentage, to pick their way through this world and put their feet where the feet need to go. And with a shod horse, you can just kind of plow through anything, generally speaking, if they're sound in the shoes, which that's a whole other can of worms. Okay. But you know what I mean? That's relative to the statement. But a barefoot horse is not unsound if they avoid or choose not to step on that rock over there. It means they're fully embodied and connected to their environment, and they're making judicious decisions about how to use their body as they go throughout the environment. And that actually denotes that they have a level of care and intent to keep you up there in a good way if they are picking their way through. And for people who are being told to boss up and push horses through, I might as well be speaking Klingon sometimes.
Yeah. No, I know. I agree. I and it's better now, but in the very beginning, like
it was a challenge.
Yes, because you try to tell somebody, you have to give them time, let them do this and that. And in the beginning, we didn't have a lot of options for hoof protection either.
Right.
So we couple, but now there's really no reason why. There's no reason why anybody has to do anything that harm feet now, because no matter what they're wanting to do. But in the beginning, people, and I still have some people will, not my clients now because I've kind of weeded them out, but they would still insist that they'll just have to suck it up. And I'm like, no, they don't.
No.
But it's like, and I'm like, why would you suck it up? And then they can't answer that. And they're like, then they try to like, well, they're a horse. And I'm like, yeah, they're a horse, which means they're more sensitive because they can feel a fly before it even lands on them. So anyways, but.
Beautiful. I have a couple of like more technical questions, if I can run them past you for my own interest. Do you see place in modern 21st century hoof care going forwards for the iron shoe to still be part of the repertoire in extreme circumstances or in those small percentages where everything else has failed, or that it has a function sometimes? Do you still see a place for the iron shoe?
I do.
You do?
I do. I'm like, so, and I tell my students this too. I'm like, so anything that I'm telling you, like, this is what I tell them in class, but it's a dangerous thing to say always or never.
Mm-hmm.
And so I prefer not to do that. There's less likelihood of need for a metal shoe now, but I can give you one example, like for sure that I would prefer a metal shoe. And and this is a true story that happened. So it was like, I just had a lady that was going through my classes. She'd been trimming her own horses, but she's going through my classes, and she graduated And it was shortly after she graduated, her horse, like she pulled up in the pasture and her horse had cut its hoof almost in half. Like it cuts bone and everything. And so I don't know how she got it on the trailer, but she did get it to the vet. And she figured that it was just going to be euthanized because it was laid open. So, the vet was pretty creative and he told her, he said, just go find something to do for a while. I gotta clean up this mess and see what we can do. And so he actually got the foot put back together. And when they got it put back together, first it started off in a cast. And then after it was coming out of the cast, she called, she was really upset because I'm not against metal shoes. I just don't think that we need them. We rarely need them anymore. But she was all upset. She's like, he's going to nail a shoe on him. And I said, that's good. He needs to have a shoe nailed on because it has to be something strong enough to keep the hoof together. Because there are times that the majority of the time in a healthy, happy foot, we want the expansion and we want the ability to expand and contract. But in a case like that, no, we do not want to have that to expand and contract. I want it stable and steady. And they had a really good farrier that he handmade the shoe so that it actually took out the part where that got cut out and didn't put any pressure on it. So
wow.
For a year, and the horse, it's a mounted shooting horse. So it's that horse, after a year, the vet wanted her to keep the shoe on it forever. And she's like, so she had me look at it too. And she's like, I don't see why we'd need to have to do that. Do you? I said, no. I said, the healing part's over. I'm like, if she goes backwards at all with the composite shoe, then you'll have to revisit the metal shoe. But the actual stabilization of it was what we needed to do. And so, when people start saying always or never, then extremists are dangerous. The horse will lose. So yeah, there's a place for it.
A very extreme example, though.
Yeah, there's not. So, I think this is.
We're going to take a break. Listening to this podcast free to air, and it is such an honor to present these episodes to anyone who has the time or desire to listen to them. It took me several years to have the ability to have a podcast because for a number of years I simply didn't have the time or the luxury. Even today, I edit and publish these episodes using my personal time to do so. And listen, I'm not complaining because this is a really, really wonderful way to spend my free time. But I just want you as the listener to be aware that nothing in this world is for free. Someone is paying for you to listen here for free. And that's me. I'm paying so that you can listen here for nothing. The only way I'm able to produce podcasts is if I have enough work happening in the background to facilitate the time spent to put these episodes together. I have no sponsors. Nobody is hiring me to make these. I make these podcasts because as soon as I can create free materials, I will. I have a YouTube channel for the same reason, but I hardly ever use it or put anything out there because I just don't have the luxury of time to spend making those videos properly for YouTube, even though I want to. I'm hoping to change that in the future. So if you're listening, I want you to know about ways that you can support this podcast, which enables it to continue into the future. The easiest way is to sign up for my Patreon, which I call my video library. I put new content there twice per week, every week, and there is an enormous list of educational materials there already. Very soon, that video library is transforming into a vastly improved platform called the Emotional Horsemanship School, and subscribers to the Patreon will get early bird special access to it very soon. Subscriptions start as little as €5 per month, and you can sign up for 1 month or 12, no pressure. And if you're listening to this episode beyond the year of 2025, the Emotional Horsemanship School is probably already open. So if you wish to support my work on a budget, that is the best way to do it, and you are helping to keep this podcast going. The link for sign up is in the notes of the show below, and you can also go to emotionalhorsemanship.com and navigate to the video library page or the Emotional Horsemanship School page and follow all of the instructions for sign up. Thank you for supporting my work and allowing me to continue bringing these amazing people to you free to the air. Now, let's return to this episode with Hoofcare legend Ida Hammer.
Yeah, there's not. So, I think this is kind of a cute story from one of my graduates, but there's going to be harder people to get to change off of metal. Like there's hardcore cowboys and that kind of stuff. But and I'm not bashing any society or anything like that. But the Amish community is very much into blacksmithery and all this stuff. And so one of my graduates, she has 2 Amish boys that help her trim her retirement center horses, and she tells them what to do because she's I don't think she's as old as me, so I got to be careful when I say she's older, but but she just doesn't have enough to do all of the horses there. So she has the young guys help her. She does hers and she tells them what to do. But their dad's pretty much old school, like
Amish blacksmithing. Yeah.
So she came to class, she was because we do the hoof protection class and we go through all different types of ways that we can protect the hoofs, doing all different kinds of things.
Lovely.
So I had 3D printed pads with me that go underneath metal shoes. And this is my point, and this is my point to my students as well. It's like there is no reason. So the metal part is iffy because it's still binding. But I said there is no reason now, with all the things that we have, that we do not have support in the caudal region of the foot.
Yes.
So if somebody chooses, that's good English.
If they choose to put on open-heeled shoes,
they are choosing to damage that horse.
They're choosing caudal failure. Yes, eventually.
It's choosing. There's no. So I can't endorse someone that puts on open-heeled metal shoes without supporting the caudal region. I will not endorse them, support that decision. So she got a pair of 3D printed shoes and took it to the dad. And he used them. I'm like, I don't know whether he may or may not continue using them, but she planted a seed in a very very archaic society of beliefs. So so in those situations, that's the best that we can do, because you're never going to force somebody to do something. But if you're going to plant a seed that maybe, and I disagree with this whole pattern, but maybe they can get another 500 miles out of their horse because they added that caudal support. That might be something that they'll switch to. I'm like, I don't like the whole train of thought, but the horse still wins a bit. It wins
a bit. Yeah, and that's better than nothing at all. So there is still a place for the iron shoe. My other question would be about transitioning from shod to barefoot. It's a fraught situation. Emotions can run high. There's often a lot of financial, entanglement at stake for the owner. There's dreams and aspirations, on the horizon for the owner. There's the horse's welfare at stake. There's professional liability and reputation at stake for the hoof care provider. And there's a question: shouldn't they experience discomfort during that transition? And if they do experience discomfort, or if it is acceptable to experience discomfort, how much and for how long?
So I am pretty adamant. I'm like 99% adamant for clients that are coming out of metal shoes. If they're coming out of metal shoes and they've been in metal shoes, not like they just threw them on for the weekend to go on a trail ride, but if they've been in metal shoes and they come out of metal shoes, I won't pull those shoes unless they let me put composites on.
Got it.
Because it's not fair to the horse. It's like the horse isn't getting any choices in the matter, as far as like, I'm wearing metal shoes today and I can't feel part of my feet and my back of my foot hurts, but then now they're going to take the shoes off and then I'm supposed to toughen up. And because what will generally happen is that even if they've had the shoes on and then they take them off, and even if the horse isn't sore-footed, that we see sore-footed, the chances of them having a compensatory pattern is very, very, very high. People won't recognize that though, because they're not limping. So they'll say, my horse is fine. And so then your horse is fine until it compensates enough that it's not fine. And then we have a whole nother issue. So they don't get a choice now. I was like, it has to be an extenuating circumstance, but and some people will say, what about boots? And I'm like, that's a maybe, but um, people aren't always the best about putting on the boots.
Mm-hmm.
Not 24/7 protection. All a horse has to do is get a little stone bruise, and like then you're set back. So I'm pretty much adamant, like 99% of the time, if I'm taking them out of metal shoes, they've got to go into composites for at least one set.
Mm.
Because several things are starting to happen with that. When you take them out of the metal and they can actually expand their foot, I'm like, that's doing things to the lamina that
Right. They've never
and
felt before.
right. And they can get micro tears in the lamina and
Yep.
and little abscesses pop up and then you have panicked owners and it's
Yep.
just and sore horses. So
Yeah,
I'm pretty adamant about it. I'm like, that
I
that a pretty
agree
good
with you. I agree with you. I have a horse below my window that I took his shoes off and almost 2.5 years ago now. And looking back, I wish I had glued the shoe, put some glue-ons on him. But I didn't. I did a whole bunch of other stuff instead, and I can explain the specifics. But when I was working with the limited compared to you clients that I did assist in their transitions, I had them confer with their farrier first inside the shoes about the form of the hoof, even though it was shod, because it's one thing to do a hoof transition to barefoot on a healthy foot. Healthy, meaning there's some sort of alignment present, it's good farriery, it's good quality shoeing. But if the shoeing was bad and the foot's malformed and it's in a shoe, to do both of those things at the same time is a problem. And sometimes I would look at the foot and say, look, I think you should probably do 2, maybe even 3 or 4 more shoeing cycles on a shorter cycle with this farrier about the long toes or about the heels or about the mediolateral imbalance first. Take some money, buy yourself some cloud boots and some deep inserts,
Yep.
and get ready for a lifestyle change. Let's implement the diet while we're doing so. Keep the shoes on for a while so that by the time the shoes come off, we're just mitigating the amount of potential stresses on the foot. So that's kind of how I started it, because I was dealing with owners that don't have access to composite shoes, barely have access to glue-on shoes, and they're learning how to trim as they go. And we got there. We got there. We got there.
Yeah. And that was those are all good choices because like in the beginning we didn't have when I first started we had one type of boot and that was the Epic. Well, if you wanted to count the I don't even know what it's a Swiss boot that was like it was like
Oh,
a
yeah, they're still around.
yes, it's like but they were back then they were just like a big galoshes though like
Bucket.
they just yes. And
Yes.
so that's like okay, that like the first time that I'm like, okay, I'm a new farrier, I'm a woman farrier with new ideals, and I bring that out for them to
And
have
they
on
just say, get out of here. Get
pretty much,
out of here.
yes, pretty
Yeah.
much. So I'm like, okay, so there's got to be some changes. So then we got the Epic. The Epic was a pretty good boot. So the wire was breaking and stuff, but I'm like, I got more people okay with that. But but before we had that stuff, I'm like, I did similar things with what you said is I've had people that wanted to change their horse out of shoes and with the limited amount of stuff that we had to protect his feet. And then we got hoof cast. I'm like, that was a whole nother thing.
Life
But
changing. Yeah.
yeah, but before that even I said if you want him to successfully change or have the best success at changing. I had her horseshoer because like he had lost so much of his caudal foot, and so this is before the EDSS. Before the 3D pads, EDSS had some pads, and so I said let's set him up for the next 2 shoeings to have these EDSS. They have frog. They have inward frog and outward frog, so there would be some more pressure on the frog. So to start to developing his digital cushion, I said, let's just have him start in those, do 2 rounds of those and then see where he's at. And then I think we'll be okay to go to boots. And so, and it worked. And so there's no, I
One
don't think,
way. There's
yeah,
no one way.
there's many ways to do things, but it should always, it should always be about the comfort of what's going to happen with the horse because they're
Mm.
the ones that's going to have to pay for it. I'm like
Mm.
owner's paying for it financially, but the horse is the one that has to go through the hoof pain or the like whatever that they've got to do. And the owner's, then the owner's frustrated, which takes it out on the horse. It's like, so it's got to be that.
I have the horse that I transitioned most recently. When he came to me, the shoes had been on for 12 or 13 weeks. And that was my choice. The previous owner said to me, look, he's due. Do you want me to change the shoes? Because I know you're going to take him barefoot anyway. Or do we just wait the extra couple of weeks, not mess with anything, send him how he is? Or do you want me to pull the shoes here? I said, I don't want him on a truck across Europe without shoes on if he's been shod since 24/7, 365. He's 10. He's been shod for 8 years, 24/7, 365. Now, where I was keeping horses at the time was on this rocky mountainside. I thought there's no way he's going to survive there. So I found a livery manager where the horses were kept in large pens as far as pens go, but that's still a small pen. Half the pen was 2-foot deep straw bedding. And the other half of the pen, I ordered a truck of sand. I spent some money on some sand and put that down. So it was sand or deep, deep, deep bedding. And he was limited. He couldn't walk for more than a minute in a straight line, not more. But I put him there on purpose because I knew he was going to have a big transition. And he'd had a serious lameness history prior to me, serious, 3 times high suspensory blowouts. And then when I looked at his feet, I saw thrush. But then when I looked deeper at the central sulcus thrush, I saw central sulcus canker on the left front that was causing a compensatory pattern. And he had caudal failure on all 4. And that was causing the right high suspensory to blow out in high-level training again and again and again. And so I took the shoes off and he just went, ow. And we put boots on him and he stood on that straw bed for 5 weeks. And my South African livery manager is an angel from heaven above because every damn day, like clockwork, she took the boots off, aired the feet out, cleaned the feet with betadine, put the medications in according to my specifications, put my homemade hoof mud on the feet and put the boots back on him. And we gave him, during the worst days, up to 3 days, we gave him some medicine, like painkillers, to get him through. And today, he's now on my track system, which is mostly sand. And I still have to be right on top of those feet because they will go south so quick if I neglect them. They will, if I leave him 5 days too long. It's like he's always on a knife's edge, but he thunders around that track. 2 weeks ago, I was doing canter departures on crushed granite from a standing stop. Barefoot, no boots, canter departures. And we've still got, high-low syndrome. We've still got caudal failure in the left front where the canker was. He's had a couple of abscesses on the hinds as, the lamina starts to find itself again. It sort of blows out right along the toe pillars, right at the lamina. He's had on both hinds. He's had almost in exactly the same spot on both hinds. Pop, 1 year after the other.
But, out of all that you just said is that this is a huge thing because how happy he is. Horses do not have to be perfect to be happy.
That's right. That's right.
So that's the one article that you and I connected on here just a couple months ago. It's like, they don't have to be perfect to be like they are who they are. They don't have to be perfect to be great.
Yes.
And there is no such thing as perfection anyway. I'm like, if you really want to look for perfection, you'll just be looking for a while. But all that stuff that you said, it's like you did all that stuff, and I'm like, and the horses are so grateful.
As well. Yes.
So he's perfect. He's perfect right now.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I have one horse that's perfect. I think the sun shines out his ass. So, and no one can tell me differently in regards to him.
I have a few animals like that. So.
You have a few? Well, on the right here on my desk, I have not 1, not 2, but 3 cats spread across my desk. And forget doing paperwork in the office. Forget it. Forget about it. I had so much fun talking to you. I'm going to start winding down the episode now, if that's all right. Because I could talk to you all day, but you have a life to live. My first question is, I want you to imagine that our work, our field is a horse stable and there's a pile of poop in the corner and you want to muck it out, what's one thing in our work, in our field, in our industry? I hate that word industry, but in our industry that you would love to just scoop up and compost somewhere?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Um, hmm. More pieces of things than others. Like, I don't know that there's one thing that I would just scoop up and get rid of.
Well, speak to some pieces. Maybe this is a horse that walks as it poos and it's dropped a bunch of balls everywhere.
Yeah. So like, I'd like to see the show industry. I don't have any problems with people showing horses. And I honestly don't have any problems with people racing horses. I jockeyed race horses and there's this split personality guilt feeling over all of that because it is so much fun, but it's so much wrong. And so, but with most stuff that happens, is that whenever there's money involved, the horse loses. So no matter who says what it is, it's like, I don't care what it is. Like, that's the whole scattered poop pile, because if there's money involved, the horse loses. So showing is, I think, like, just like you have the horse that has the sunshine out his ass. I don't like to show myself, because it's like we have German Shepherd dogs, and the one could definitely have been, well, both of them probably could have been very good show dogs, but I refuse to show anything to have somebody else tell me that my dog's not the best when I already know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that way with the horse industry. It's like, if they could just change it up a little bit, that they weren't showing so many young horses, let them mature, let it be fair. That's why I like competitive trail riding so much, is because you can't cheat with that. Like, they ding you if you have a nick, or if your horse isn't happy, or whatever, like that, you get dinged for that. So if they started judging all horse shows on the same guidelines as competitive trail riding, then that would probably be one of the things. I just think, but I don't know. I don't have one major thing, because it's like, because as soon as I say one major thing, that, because I don't do it always as or nevers. And so like in the whole feeding thing, this is like a whole controversy. It's like, everybody's like, they have to have grass hay. I have to have grass hay. Well, our horses do have grass hay, but I'm like, I don't hate alfalfa either. And they get alfalfa like it's treated like a grain,
Right.
and to the
Right.
horses that aren't sensitive to it, because there are horses that are sensitive to it. So, I'm just not a good rule follower, because every single animal or person or living creature that you come into contact with, so that I can't find one pile of manure in the barn, because there's going to be an exception to the rule. So I would like to take parts of it, pick it up, maybe pick some of it up and throw it at people. But
well, that's very, very magnanimous. Very magnanimous. There are certain things that I would for sure like to muck out, and I can say it extremely confidently. The Spanish Serraton I would muck out in a heartbeat.
So tell me what that is.
It's a noseband.
Oh, yeah.
Made of metal.
Oh, yeah.
With serrated spikes on the horse side.
Oh, yes.
And it's often used unwrapped, so raw. And I once pulled, there are ones that go on the top, there are ones that go on the bottom. There are people who have whole discussions around fit and application, and they say it's a refinement tool, et cetera, et cetera. It looks like a medieval torture device, works like a medieval torture device, and there is no reality in God's green earth that I would agree to put that on the horse. Having said that, I've got one in my barn that I pulled off a mule that I found who had escaped. And she was dragging baling twine, and at the end of the baling twine, there was a serraton around her jaw. She was in her 20s. And so she had pulled hard enough at her tether to cut the flesh, and she walked off and found our horses because she was thirsty. She had taken her donkey friend with her. And when we saw her that morning, firstly, I was furious. I was enraged. And then I was deeply sad
Mm-hmm.
because I was not in a place to rescue this horse, nor was she in any geographical location where rescue was possible. And who wants a 20-year-old mule in the middle of the Alpujarra? No one wants. So I pulled that blood-stained Seraton off her, and we doctored her wounds. And I got a padded halter from my tack store, and I gave it to her. And when the owner came and picked her up, he took her off in the halter without an issue. But he was just using a Seraton because that's what everyone had around. And even then, when I do retreats on my farm, I take a neck rope, which is, the symbol of freedom and riding and evolution, etc., and better ethics, whatever. That's the symbol on the surface. And I take the Seraton and I ask the consent of my participants at the retreats if I can put the neck rope around their windpipe. And I gently, with good hands, put some pressure through the cordeo, through the neck rope on their windpipe. And then I tell them to give me 1 out of 10, how comfortable are they? 10 being very uncomfortable, 1 being I'm fine. And usually they're somewhere around a 7 or an 8. They're like, that's really uncomfortable, the neck rope on my windpipe. And then I take the Seraton and I gently put it in the same place. And I very carefully, with good hands, hold the Seraton and I say, which one felt better? And they say, oh my God, the Seraton feels better. So when you say, I never do always and nevers, I would gladly muck out Seratons and never see them used again, put them all in the fire. But even then, when people actually come to me and I'm in a place to properly and correctly teach on nuance in a way where I can never be misunderstood, I do show them that even in my most extreme example, nuance is possible. Yeah. But still, I would muck it out. I want it out, gone. Yeah. And electric spurs, for example. Spurs that give an electric shot.
Stuff I don't even
to
know.
The bin. To the bin. Electric spurs, electric whips, to the bin with all of them, Yes,
I didn't even know that stuff existed. It's like when you said that, I'm like, so yeah, that would, so any torture device like that.
Torture device, yes.
Any torture device that I am aware of or unaware of, that I would definitely get rid of that.
Yeah, and it's so good that you're not aware of them. Listen, I wish. Someone take it back. I would like to put my head back in the sand, please. I would like to not know some of the things I've discovered exist.
Oh, I know. I know, because it's like I don't know those things, but there are other things. Like I know the things. That's why I went right to the horse show things, because
right.
I'd been trimming at a barn. On one side of the barn, they were my clients. On the other side of the barn is a Western pleasure training trainer. And it's like you'd go by there, I'm like, and they'd have their heads tied up to their feet, couldn't touch the floor, so that it does their, like, it fatigues their neck to where they get the peanut roller effect and all that stuff. And it's like, and unfortunately, I'm like, I had to quit trimming. I can't trim at places like the horses. When the horses are screaming at you, on like you can't stop hearing them.
Right.
And so that's why I picked on the show part so much, I guess, is because money always encourages people to do stuff that they shouldn't do.
Well, when I ask my guests, so far 30 odd, almost 40 guests at this early stage, that question, the competitive and show world is usually the one that comes up the most. There's a magnifying glass on that world right now. Again, I would love to turn on the television or switch onto YouTube to sit down and spend my evening watching our sport. I would love to do that. And every now and then I've found some examples where I'm like, look, I don't agree with everything that I'm seeing, but I do see a happy horse and quiet riding, I would love to, really, really, please God, I'm tired of watching the housewives and the Kardashians, though don't worry, I spend plenty of time doing that as well. I would love to sit down and watch our sport, but I just can't without wincing,
Oh, I know. It got so bad because we used to like my Ed and I would always go to barrel races. That'd be our favorites. Is like, and we'd go, and then you just, the more you learn, the worse it gets. And so then the last one, I think the horse wouldn't go around the barrel right, and the guy was like whacking on it, and I'm like, he's lame, dumbass. And Ada's like, you can't say that. And she's like, we can't go anywhere. I'm like, I know we can't. So then I thought I'd be safe to go if I didn't have to look at anything, like down below the knees. And so then, but that doesn't work because then you start studying the body and you see body compensation. So it's like, we just can't go anywhere. And so if we do go anywhere, and she's like, could you just not say anything for a couple minutes so I can look at the horses? And I'm like, I will try. Last horse talk that I had to do at the Illinois Horse Fair is like, they had my room where I was given the talk right outside of where I was at, like on the cross ties. They had a purse run that they had they had poor Scotch bottom shoes on, but they were overgrown and his feet were like ducks, and he's trying to bite people. And like, I broke my rule and I said I'd be trying to bite him too if I had feet like that. And I'm like, and then I kept walking because
Yes.
it's just you can't. And so I try not to do that stuff because you'll never convince anybody to try something new if you're like
If
that.
you do it in anger, yeah, that's right.
I try not to. Once in a while my filter breaks and it happens, but
I think you're allowed that.
there are sometimes, at least it's just my mouth. It's not anything else at this point. I can't swear that it couldn't happen, but
I think that's a perfect segue into my second to last question, which is all about this change that's occurring in our industry. And our industry's seen many seasons of change, but I think we're undergoing another.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What do you think this season of change is all about?
I think I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for it and worried for it. And I say that in two ways because everyone has a different way to interpret things. And I'm excited for animals in general, but like our industries, the horses. But I'm excited because they get a chance to be heard. I'm excited because so many things that have been done wrong, like including myself, like that I've done wrong and that's been done wrong and misunderstood and misinterpreted and every kind of thing is finally, like, people are finally embracing that and understanding that, and I think that's a good thing. The bad thing is that it's not a bad thing. It's the scary thing for me is the transitioning part, because as humans normally do, it's all or nothing. So there'll be like, I've had people that would be like but in their I will call it the old. It's like when I write my books, I'm like, I put old knowledge, new knowledge. So in old knowledge, they would say, you will stand here, you'll do this. I'm like, and they'll like prank and have a chain and all this stuff. And they will do this. And so then they become enlightened, which I'm thrilled about. But then the horse is confused in this interim, and then they're enlightened. And so then they go from like harsh correction to no discipline. There's a difference between punishment and discipline. And so they'll go from one to the other. As a hoof trimmer, I'm like, a lot of times I'm the one that are like, we as hoof trimmers are the ones that suffer for it, because now the horse has no clue about like what because, and so I'm excited and worried because there's a lot of misinterpretation, and there's a lot of learning to be like I've had horses my entire life, and I'm still learning things about communicating with my horses, because I started off like the old way, then like I went to the natural horsemanship way, which was a kinder way, but it still wasn't letting them have a chance to really say anything. Like supposedly it was, but
it really wasn't. Yeah, it really wasn't.
You were talking, you were telling them what to say, kind of. And so the coolest thing is, and I do have this on video because I know Michelle Knapp.
Yes, I love her. She works with me.
Yep, I know her. So like the coolest thing, because we've got this amazing foxtrotter, and he's a good boy, and he's never been abused. Like he belonged to our friends. He's never been abused, but he's always like pretty much just been required to do as he's told. He's never been able to have an opinion, pretty much. It's like his opinion, it's like you just do what you're told. So he's kind of like a soldier. He was not like heavy round pen and all that kind of stuff, but it's like that's just what was expected out of him, and he just obliged. So when we got him, I told him, I said, like we actually told him two different things. I told him, I said, you can have your opinions here. I'm like, your opinions are free. But I do say with your opinions, you still have to be respectful. You can't hurt me, because if you hurt me, then whoever has to take care of you may not care whether you have an opinion. So that's the rules. So and then we told him, because I do wild and crazy things sometimes, a little less than I used to. And so Ada's a real timid writer, and so we told him, like, you can express your opinions louder with me, but with Ada, you still have to take care of her because she's still kind of timid. And he understood all that. He really did. It's like Ada could ride him, and I'm like, and he would not do anything silly. He'd be just a complete gentleman. I'd get on him, and a couple seconds later, and he would be just like, not bad, but I'm like, he's like, I can express myself now, right? And I'm like, yes. So we were at a clinic with Michelle, and we were practicing some bridleless riding with just the neck rope going through some barrels. So we were going through the barrels, and so we went through the barrels the first time, and he did it not so bad. So it's like, let's try it again. So it's like he did it again. He did it really good. And the third time he did it really, really good. And so, being typical me, I'm like, I asked him to do it one more time. And they actually, one of my friends got it on film. So like, he threw the biggest tizzy fit. I'm like, he like a little temper tantrum. He wasn't trying to throw me. It's like he was like stomping his feet up and down and shaking his head, and I was just like, and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I just laughed. I said, "Yes." I said, "I think what he was just saying is like, I got it already, stupid."
Yep.
He's like,
100%.
yes. But it cracked me up, because it's like, it was so him, because he's like, he did all three things I asked him to do, and he did them so nice. And then the fourth one, he just like looked like a little child having a tantrum. And Michelle was there, and she's like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yes." I said it's my fault. I shouldn't have just asked him for the fourth one.
One of the rules I teach in my, I'm going to say it, a word that it's like a Rorschach ink blot to people, method, but there it is. If you train a horse, there's a method that's applied. One of the rules that I teach is the rule of threes.
I broke it.
If the horse has been focused, attentive, and tried their best 3 times, don't ask a fourth time. If the first attempt was a failure to launch, if a second attempt was the horse going, "Huh, what?" and then the third attempt, they're giving it their all, then you can go 4 and 5, but it's still 3 honest attempts. If the horse can't even launch into an honest attempt, you ask yourself why, and you need to ask a 4-dimensional why: spiritual, mental, physical, emotional. You need to look at that 4-dimensionally, but usually our first lens is the emotional component, which is, for example, a horse having a conniption fit at the 4th offering, because usually they express with their feelings what's going on, and then through the emotions you can start to understand the other tangents to them. Michelle works with me. She's one of my coaches with my clients, because I've got more than I can handle at this time. But God knows I've got it coming for me. So we see what happens. Check back in a few years, we see where I am. But Michelle, and I think myself, we're trying to fill that gap you speak to, that transitional gap. You know, if the Titanic is sinking, how many lifeboats have we got? You know, if there's a chasm cracking open, can we build a bridge? Does anyone have a really, really long stick? You know, and that's what I'm trying to do, but still letting people know that there is one side and another. There is the sinking ship and not on the sinking ship. There's still some right and wrongs here. There's still one side of the chasm, and the other side of the chasm, there's a bridge. But you got to cross it, babe. You've got to actually go find the lifeboat and get in it. I'm not going to say, "Hey, look, there's water around your feet. Do you like being wet? Do you like being cold?" I don't know. Like, we're kind of leaning off on one side. Here's like another vessel. I'm going to encourage you to get in it. No, get in the damn lifeboat. Let's go. Like, and bring your horse with you, for heaven's sake. Like, you've got to, advocate for yourself in that way. I don't know. And meanwhile, the orchestra is playing as we're all going down. But that's another question. Here's my last question for you, Ida. We're living in an age of learning journeys, right? Everyone's on a journey somewhere, but what's home to you? No matter what you learn, where you go, who you talk to, when it comes to Ida and horses, what's home for you? That feeling of home.
I don't know. I mean, what do I do with the horses? Is that kind of, what do you mean?
You can answer it any way you wish, but for me, home is a feeling. It's a feeling of belonging. It's a feeling of ease. It's a feeling of, this I know to be true for me.
I would say, I don't know exactly how to answer that. Like, I guess just being. It's like, because so for so long everybody thinks, and I do love to ride. I'm like, I love to ride, but I don't care what I'm like, it doesn't, I haven't ridden for a couple of years just because life hasn't presented the opportunities to be able to do that. But just having them, just being around them, just seeing them be silly. Um, I guess that, like, and my dogs is like the dogs and the horses like are equal. It's like, so like they're like the dogs can sit on the couch with me, but the horses can't. So, but just seeing them be who they are and seeing just silly things like when they show me their silly self, like Playboy's a very serious horse. He doesn't like to show people his silly side. And once in a while he'll show like his silly side. And this year has been a rough year because and we're going to get into the geriatrics horse barn here. It's like that, but we've lost 3 horses since July, and
Oh,
that's been
sorry.
that's been hard on the horses, especially Playboy. Playboy, I thought he's so sensitive. I'm like he would colic. I'm like we had an animal communicator talk to him and stuff about stuff because um one of his best friends died and he was a mess. So just being with them and getting to see their silly self and letting them be who like they are. Like um we blended herds because of the couple of the horses dying. And so Playboy is very serious all the time, but then we have another horse. He's a jokester. And so he just likes to he plays pranks on the other horses. And so he's been good for Playboy because Playboy never took the initiative to play. And so he'll play now. So just stuff like that. It's like just being like we live kind of like along a river out in the country, and so just the peacefulness of home was like with being with all of the animals. I guess that would be the biggest thing. It's like I don't have to do anything with them.
Someone who didn't know how to answer that question, that was a kind of spectacular answer, in my opinion.
Well, good because I wasn't sure if that was the right answer because it's like that's just
Oh, okay, I see. Well, you just haven't talked with me very much yet. And what you'll learn is that I'm never looking to lead you to a loaded answer. I'm always really interested in what you have to say, whatever it is you have to say. That's I've run into that with a few people before. They're like, hang on, what does he want me to say now? What's that? And it's like, no, I want to hear what you want to say. And they go, oh, I'm like, you haven't spoken to someone like that before? Like my partner, my mother-in-law believes that he's autistic, but when I ask him, do I look good in this? And if I don't, he'll just say no. He won't say, well, honey, it's like, that color's good for your eyes, but that shape's not good for your shoulders, and maybe you need to think about horizontal strike. No. If I don't look good and I ask him, do I look good? And if I don't, he'll say no. I ask him twice a year advice about my work and my business, and he says, you really want to hear my answer? And I say, okay, go. And then he delivers me an absolutely excruciating and devastating truth. And I go, here's the knife back. Thank you for telling me. And now you're absolutely right. Let me go implement that. So that's kind of how I live and how I roll. But thank you for that answer. It's a perfect answer.
well, that's
Home is
hilarious.
home.
Well, it's so funny that you just said that story about like how do you look because um before Ada got sick, she would always go with me to trim. Like we'd go like most of the time, like three out of 5 days a week, she'd go with me to trim. And so and if I'm driving by myself, and I'm not saying this out loud, I may or may not answer text, but if I'm driving and she's with me, like she'll grab my phone and answer the text for me.
Excellent.
So I'm the jibber jabber. I can't just give somebody like I can't answer somebody. If somebody writes me, I'm like, good morning, how are you today? And then I'll go on with whatever I was gonna say. Ada's like, just what
Boom.
you just no. So I had a client write to me and she was asking me a question and Ada just said no. And so the client emailed me. She goes, "Are you upset with me?
Uh,
Because like usually, like you talk a little bit more, but like you just like was really curt and short and said no." And I just laughed. I said, "So now everybody knows if they get a text from me and
it's
it's
Ada.
yes, if it's one or two lines, it's Ada. It's like yes, no, maybe it's Ada. And if it's a jabbery line and finally get to the point, it's me." So they so when when she answers my phone and she says no, they'll go, "Hi, Ada."
Love it. I love it. It's so nice. That's so nice. Well, please give my best to Ada. I've not met, but I feel like I've met her through you. So please say hello to Ada for me. And I want to thank you for taking this time to get to know each other a bit better today. If you want to play in 2026 next year, I'm very soon setting all of my 2026 dates. I'd love to come and play with you and the horses and with your community. That would be so much fun. I'm really down.
That's fun. So let me check. So Michelle's doing a class where we have the classes here is in Leroy, where Michelle teaches at Karen Wimpy's barn. So I'll see
Oh,
if
so you're within driving distance of Michelle.
yeah, because like I think maybe she might be 3 hours from us, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's really doable. Well, Michelle and I are definitely planning something for 2026 at her place.
Well, let me
So,
check with Karen because we usually do it at Karen's place because it holds more people. So it's like so it's usually in July, and so
oh,
is that. So let me check with her. I'll see if we can pencil in something for 2026,
that would
and
be
so that
fun.
we can do that because I think like we'll have a lot of fun. We do so many fun things.
It would be fun. And probably 2026, I'll be traveling in the summer. Usually so far I've been traveling in the spring or the fall, but I kind of want to be at home for once in the spring. It's kind of beautiful here. So I want to experience a spring in my own home. And then when it gets really hot, I'll go travel somewhere. But that sounds fun. Ida, thank you so much for your time. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. This is fun.
Bye. That was Ida Hammer on the Emotional Horsemanship podcast. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to learn more about Ida Hammer, her website and her contact information is in the show notes of this episode below. Please remember to subscribe to and download episodes to this podcast if you'd like to continue supporting us. And if you'd like to learn more about emotional horsemanship, please visit emotionalhorsemanship.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.